So to give you fair warning, this video is going to be really long because I have a lot of opinions on this topic, so watch if you dare. Recently, Hank Green of Vlogbrothers fame made a video called Why Are Fewer People Studying Science and Engineering? If you haven't watched that video, you really should, because this video is basically an elaboration upon it and you will be extremely bored without proper context. So click somewhere in the screen to go there, or if you're watching on a mobile thing, there's a link in the description. Also, if you're not subscribed to Hank and John, you really should be, because they're the Vlogbrothers and they rule like a substantial portion of YouTube and the internet more generally. Anyway, I'll shut up and let you go watch that video. All done? Excellent. As you can see, I basically stole my vlogging style from the Vlogbrothers. Okay, so in his video, Hank offers 2 reasons why he thinks fewer people are getting STEM, or science, technology, engineering, and math degrees. Reason 1, science, technology, engineering, and math are hard. Yes! Somebody finally said it! As previously noted, all college majors are hard, but I do think that STEM majors are hard in a very unique way. For example, at the college that I went to, you weren't given any extra credit for the labs that you took, which meant that I took an additional 6 to 9 hours of class every week on top of my 16 hours of classes already, and they just basically didn't appear on my transcript. And those additional hours were accompanied by a lot of homework and stress, because lab does not mean that you just show up, do an experiment, and are done. Lab means that you do an experiment for 3-ish hours, and then you spend 5 hours, writing up your results, trying to analyze your data, which is usually really hard because you have like 3 really bad data points and like arguing with your lab partner. It's a lot of work for what feels like very little reward, even though in my experience, lab is where you learn the material in any meaningful way. But I don't think that that's the only or even really the main reason that people don't study STEM subjects. I think, and this is based entirely on my own experience, so feel free to correct me in the comments, but I think that a lot of people find STEM subjects hard in a way that doesn't also feel enriching. I mean, when your anthropology professor points out that you eat both breakfast sausages and hot dogs, but you eat one exclusively for breakfast and the other exclusively not for breakfast, and you start realizing that all of the rules by which you live your life are entirely arbitrary, it feels both fascinating and terrifying. Like standing on something incredibly tall and thinking about the ground down there. Science doesn't do that, or at least doesn't do that exactly most of the time. Science is about the details of things. Picking up ideas and playing with them is sufficient and encouraged in the liberal arts. But when you study a science, the minutiae are really important. Like, if you have glucose molecules hooked together with alpha linkages rather than beta linkages, they have an entirely different function. Positives and negatives matter. Units matter. Science, at least in my experience, is not about being high above the world. It's about crouching down next to it. Science is about lying with your nose touching the ground and thinking about what the soil was before it was soil. How did it get there? What lives in it? How much of it is there? And like, how do you grow crops in this? Now, this is not to say that I find either science or the liberal arts useless or uninteresting. I just find that the cliff face becomes a little bit more terrifying than fascinating for me, and I have to like climb down and look at something under a microscope for a little bit. Both perspectives give you a fuller and more nuanced view of the world. I just happen to find one more comforting than the other. But I think for a lot of people, they find the world of science kind of constricting and claustrophobic. They want to go climb the cliffs and look around. This is compounded by the fact that in science, you are very rarely told that you are doing well. Most of the notes you're going to receive are about why you got a B- instead of an A-, at least if you're an average student like me. And that can feel really cold, or like the person that's teaching you doesn't like you or think you're smart. And it can be really hard to take all of those classes and get worse grades than the people around you and not feel discouraged and stupid. You can trust me because I've been there and I've felt that way. Now, I don't think that we can force people to enjoy science, but I do think we can improve on this last point. I don't think that we need to inflate people's grades, but I do think we need to make it clear that grades do not reflect your worth as a person, and they kind of don't really reflect your intelligence either. Grades are about work ethic. I think we scientists need to make STEM classes feel warm and welcoming and like a place that you can succeed. We need to make it clear that you can succeed in science so long as you put in the time. And like, people can enjoy science even when it's hard. I may not be particularly good at this, but I think it's something that needs to happen. Okay, reason 2 from Hank's video. Yes, I know we're only on reason 2. I told you this was going to be a long video. There are people who are innately good at science and math, and they are engineering geniuses. Now I get to talk about a thing that I find really interesting. Let's use a case study. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 1, Fitzsimmons. Wait. You do watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? If you don't, I'll explain the characters briefly, but really shame on you for missing one of the best shows on television that you can watch for free. Legally even, on Hulu. Fitzsimmons is actually 2 characters, Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons. They're both extremely nerdy, they speak in jargon-laden language at 3 times the speed of a normal human being, and they finish each other's sandwiches. Gemma Simmons has 2 advanced degrees in biologically related sciences and handles most of the, lab work and medically related stuff, like surgery. To all of my scientist friends out there, I say I know, I hear you, I will address it in just a couple of seconds. Fitz, on the other hand, is supposed to be a rocket scientist. He's the engineering half of Fitzsimmons. He tinkers and looks at computer screens and thinks about robots a lot. Fitzsimmons are both white, look way too young to have PhDs, and are very obviously geniuses, or genii. You get the gist. By the fact that I can explain these two characters so quickly shows the overuse of the genius scientist trope. Anyway, the reason that I find Fitzsimmons so interesting is because those are my parents. No, seriously, when I said that my family had done all of the school possible, I wasn't kidding. My mom has 2 advanced degrees in the biological sciences, and my dad is an aerospace engineer, which is the fancy word for a rocket scientist. But here's the clincher. My parents aren't Fitzsimmons. Are they smart? Sure. But were they born innately understanding immunology and magnetism? No. Yes, sure, they may sound like Fitzsimmons sometimes, but if you ask them to slow down and explain, they will, because they started where you are, and they know the feeling. And if you ever really want to stump them, you should just ask them what the other person studied, because I think my dad would get somewhere to around cells, and my mom would land somewhere near magnetism. And they'd both be right, in very, very broad terms. My point is that we tend to portray scientists as these, like, omniscient, infinitely capable Einsteins, maybe because it's comforting to think that science has all of the answers you'll ever need, or maybe because it's just easier if you have a character that always knows what's going on, or maybe for some other reason. But the truth of the matter is that just studying biology does not give you the skills to, like, perform surgery. That's why MDs exist. And studying physics does not guarantee that you will understand anything a biologist says. And studying chemistry means you'll understand biology and physics almost as well as you did in high school. People who study A science don't really understand all of science. They understand one very, very, very small corner of it. And frankly, they probably only remember a fraction of what they were supposed to have learned while studying that corner anyway. I can promise you that people in STEM fields are not omniscient. And if you've ever seen me try to dissect something, you know that we are also not infinitely capable. We have our strengths and weaknesses just like everyone else. We're just people. Anyway, all I'm trying to say in this crazy long video is that you can do science. I promise. You might have to work hard, but you can understand it. You don't have to be a genius, and you don't have to get it right away. You might not get the best grades, but that doesn't matter in the long run, provided that you worked hard. You can do science. You just need to try. And who knows, you might just enjoy being that close to the Earth for a while. And saying like, comment, and subscribe still feels weird, so I'll say it in my next video. And I'll see y'all next time.